Now, deepfake fraud is really on the rise with scammers targeting your pocketbooks. Here to talk about that, Patrick Dell is back with us from The Globe. Great to have you. We also have Marilyn Abate with us, a partner in forensic and financial crimes at KPMG. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Patrick, I want to start with you. On an individual scale, what types of deepfakes are you seeing out there targeting people?
I've seen two kinds in two broad buckets. One are fairly rough and ready deepfakes that aren't very convincing, but blasted out over a large network, say Facebook or YouTube, where there's a greater chance of getting a hit. But if you look closely, you can see that there's evidence that these are not real videos of real people. The others are much more targeted, almost like a phishing attack, where you're targeting one particular individual and using deepfake technology to fake being their boss or a senior executive to tell them to do something they otherwise wouldn't do.
So on the senior executive front, I've seen some big numbers thrown out there. So what are you seeing in that way?
Well, there's a great example from Hong Kong earlier this year where a worker in a financial institution transferred something like $25 million to fraudsters' accounts because they were a victim of deepfake during a live video call, which is a fascinating aspect of that technology to mimic a face but also a voice in real time.
So they're in this call with people that look like their boss, their colleagues, and they say transfer this money, and they did it.
Yep, that was the case in that situation. It was reported that the worker was dubious about the whole scenario, but the sense of urgency and then the deepfake video calls was enough to convince them to send money to the fraudsters.
$25 million.
And that is probably just one example. There may be many more that don't get publicised because it is embarrassing for those institutions that do that kind of thing.
Marilyn, I want to come to you because when I hear a headline like that, I think, oh, that must be a one-off. But your company surveyed 300 companies in Canada to ask about deepfake fraud, to ask about different types of fraud. Is this a one-off?
No. No, unfortunately, it's a rampant issue. And we interviewed 300 companies who were victimized by fraud,
okay,
who had experienced fraud. And just because we wanted to understand what are the types of frauds that they're seeing and were victimized by, because not everyone's reporting it, because people feel ashamed and stupid that they fell victim to it.
And I also think of a reputational risk for a business,
yeah,
because then people think, should I trust them? Should I put my money, my goods and should I work with them? Like that's a real question.
Yeah, it's very challenging for them to understand what's real behind the transaction and not.
Patrick, on an individual level, I think of the videos that are coming our way, and oftentimes prominent people that people trust are featured in them. So I want to play one that features Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland.
Important news, we're going live. Let's listen to an important address to the people of Canada.
Hello, dear Canadians. Today I want to draw your attention to a new opportunity that has opened up for us thanks to progress in the field of artificial intelligence. I'm talking about a new platform created by the genius of our time, the owner of Twitter, SpaceX, and Tesla. This project has already established itself as a major generator of wealth for many of our citizens.
Now that goes on to tell people about a great economic opportunity that is fake, completely fake video. But when I see a news anchor, when I see the throw, when I see Chrystia seemingly, it could feel real.
Absolutely. It adds to that air of authenticity. And it just has to be convincing enough to convince enough people to make it worthwhile. That by no means is a perfect deep fake. You can tell by the movement of the mouth of the host and of Chrystia, and there's also evidence of a deep fake around the jawline of the anchor. But dressing it up as a fake news report is a great example of trying to give it more authenticity, but also invoking the name of someone like Elon Musk, who has a persona of being a tech genius. So, hey, if it's something Elon's doing, it must be good. I need to get on this myself.
But you mentioned those small things in the face that you might notice, but if you're watching on a phone, I don't know if I would notice that.
No, exactly. And also another factor with that video is the very flat presentation of Chrystia's voice, which indicates that it's been made by an artificial generation tool. And if you're not listening on your phone or not listening on a device, you wouldn't necessarily pick that up either if you're only reading the captions on a video.
Marilyn, when you were surveying the companies, there must be deep frustration over this because at the end of the day, money is being lost.
Yes, so for businesses, it's not just the money, it's also the reputation risk, the legal risk. They have to respond to the incident, and responding to it in a short period of time is really key for them. So it is very challenging for a business.
You know, I noticed that in your survey, the top 5 most common external fraud schemes, in that list, misinformation and disinformation campaigns. So how do those overlap in this conversation?
So a lot of times a small business can fall victim to either a payment scam. So somebody, similar to what Patrick was saying before, somebody's asking you to send money and you think it's the CEO, but it's not. So now you're sending money and you're victimized. So the small business can fall victim to that, as well as misinformation. Everybody's heard of the CRA scams. So they also scam some of the small businesses. Think of the CEBA loans. If you don't, you want to break on your interest rate, or you want to pay us later. There was a bunch of people scamming and putting misinformation out there for companies to fall victim to say, I can't afford to repay my loan now, maybe I'll postpone it.
Can we do anything to stop this?
It's challenging, to put it lightly. And there are some things you can do. You could try to develop an eye for some of these indicators that things are fake. Listen to that audio, look for glitches in the voices in the mouth, but also think about what's being presented. One of the old adages of if it's too good to be true, it probably is, really does quite often apply. And in the case of this Freeland video, it was promoting maybe a basic universal income or some kind of stock trading or crypto coin. If they're promising you millions of dollars return on a small investment, obviously it's too good to be true.
What are businesses doing, Marilyn, to try to stop the flow of this and to say, hey, we actually have some defenses here?
So a lot of businesses have implemented controls, and a lot of them are callback to verify that it actually is the person who asked for the money, let's say. So instead of watching the video after the CEO has done that and told you, you call him on his personal cell phone number that you have to verify that he actually asked you for this.
See, but this is so difficult because if I think of how many Zoom meetings, video calls, like, do I need to be calling people to verify every single time we make a decision?
Exactly, and that could speak to a corporate culture. If you don't feel comfortable checking with your CEO or your CFO, you may go ahead and do a transfer to a fraudster. A tip that I've come across is to have maybe a code phrase if it's a family member, or ask them something only they would know, almost like a spy movie now.
Yeah.
You know, does the eagle fly at midnight? That could be your family code word, and if they don't know that, then you're probably being scammed by someone using a synthetic voice.
Marilyn, what would you say to other small and medium-sized businesses that have not faced this yet but are scared about it?
So yes, they need to think about controls to put in place, and they need to have the conversation. So we've done a lot of training with small businesses as well as larger corporations, fraud training across every employee in the place, so that from beginning to end, everybody understands that these are the fraud scams that are out there and how to protect themselves and how to be extra vigilant.
And we did see, like, those businesses are losing between 1% to 5%. It sounds like small money, but if you're $1 million business, like, that $50,000, that's somebody's salary.
Yeah.
And that trickles down a lot of times when people lose their jobs. So it matters. All of these things matter, whether you're working on an individual or a corporate scale. Patrick, Marilyn, we are not talking about this conversation, but it has been great to have you on the program.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Next week on Big If True, looking back at the year that was, 2024's most memorable misinfo and disinfo moments.